So, here we are, the third game in the series, and boy I wanted to like this more than I did. F.E.A.R 3 shows what time it was made, since we have cover, regenerating health, and co-op thrown in for no discernible reason, but I appreciated that the game rewarded you for playing it by giving you the reflex, weapon, and ability upgrades as you went. The point system is kind of whatever. I know it eventually adds up to which son wins the game and gets their ending, but that only applies to co-op, and you can only play Point Man until you complete all the levels with him. So seeing Paxton's ending really depends on how much you liked this game in the first place. For some reason, you start the game in a Latin American prison, presumably owned by Armacam because what isn't at this point? Whatever needs to be owned by them to be convenient. You fight your way out of the prison through the local neighborhood, killing Armacam forces as you go, and hijack a helicopter to take you back to America, which, sure, best guess is Fairport is about 2,000 miles away, but whatever, it's a super helicopter. You were prompted to do this because you heard Jin's voice on the other side of your earpiece. You know, Jin, from the first game, who died in Extraction Point. It's fine. You fly it back to Fairport, crash into a wholesale store, and fight your way through civilians who essentially have been driven mad by Alma's power, turning them into feral folk who make nests and effigies and paint the walls with blood. Which is a choice, but we're moving on. You fight your way through the store, eventually reaching the nearby suburbs, which you also fight through, reaching the substation where Jin is hiding out and reuniting with her. There is no mention of the last time you saw her, because we're throwing the events of Extraction Point out the window. It's fine, don't think about it. At this point, you see Michael Beckett from the second game is being held by Armacam, and a video of him ranting in isolation reveals that Alma is pregnant from assaulting him. This is not a surprise if you played the second game. Paxton obviously wants the birth to happen, but Jin and by implication Point Man do not. I'm sure this won't be a problem. Jin figures Beckett can help him stop the birth, somehow, so the two of you move to intercept Armacam's evacuation, only for Jin to be immediately yoinked by two of the cultists, I'll call them. This is fine. You meet back up with Jin after killing one of the Armacam commanders who grabbed her from the cultists to lure you away from Alma. The tower you've been making your way to then collapses. Paxton throws his brother away from being crushed by it, and Jin fires him off in a pod to find Beckett and stop the birth, and isn't seen again, but survives the events of the game this time. Once you fight your way through the airport, being derided and ridiculed as an inbred freak of nature by assholes who can phase shift through walls and are way bigger than any normal human should be, you find Beckett, who is not feeling great after the horrific time he's had of it in the aftermath of being assaulted by Alma and experimented on by Armacam afterwards, because of course they did. Paxton possesses him to find out what he knows, essentially subjecting Beckett to another assault, and the strain of the possession causes Beckett to explode into bloody chunks, so he's having a great time. Throughout the game, the brothers are hounded by visions of a creature called the Creep, a towering, gangly beast that rips apart everything in its way. And it's worth noting that while everything unnatural happening around you is a product of Alma's contractions making her power spin out of control, she is visibly intimidated and frightened by this creature, and it's made clear that the Creep is a manifestation of Harlan Wade. Harlan being represented as a hideous monster whose groin and abdomen is just a gaping chasm is a design I appreciated, considering what he did to his daughter. With no transition scene explaining how they got there, the brothers return to the Project Origin facility where they grew up, traversing the traumatic memories of their time there and breaking objects associated with the trauma. I liked this sequence as it showed more of what the brothers went through, once more underlining the fact that none of this would have been as bad as it was without the cruelty of Harlan Wade. Once all the memories are gone, you confront Harlan himself, fighting him as a colossal version of the Creep monster in a twisted mind space. With the memory of Harlan destroyed, the brothers finally move on to Alma herself, as his memory was fighting to keep them from reaching her. Presumably, she was in the old house above the Project Origin facility, as that's what can be inferred from their surroundings. It isn't made all that clear. They find Alma rendered completely immobile by her horrifically swollen belly, just some pure pregnancy nightmare fuel that furthers my desire to never ever personally experience this human horror show we erroneously call the miracle of life. Paxton wants to eat Alma and the baby, echoing Harlan's view of becoming gods. Okay. Whereas Pointman makes his desire clear by pointing a gun at Alma's belly. The brothers proceed to fight each other in a scene that swings around the pair, while the game makes note of who scored higher in the various categories the game gave you points in throughout its levels. The ending you get depends on who scored higher, and as you can only play as Pointman first, everyone who finished the game, unless they did it in co-op, will see Pointman's ending. Killing his brother a second time, Pointman goes to finish Alma only to hesitate when he looks into her eyes, presumably seeing how afraid and vulnerable she is, only to then aid in the birth and pick up a conveniently swaddled baby. The speed at which this man swaddled that baby is impressive, but I guess he must have used bullet time to cover for the fact that modelling a bundle of cloth is probably easier than modelling a squirming baby. I get it. Anyway, Alma immediately expires after giving birth for no discernible reason. Jin explains over comms that everything seems to have gone back to normal, and Pointman calmly walks into the light with his new baby sibling. The end. After the credits, you get an end scene showing the dreaded synchronicity event, an incident in Paxton and Pointman's youth where the former connected with Alma, causing him to become exponentially more dangerous and aggressive, brutally killing a group of Armacam goons who tried to subdue him in a sequence that I felt was very well done. Harlan did this. He created them, molded them, abused them, and this outburst is the result of every cruelty he's ever heaped on his children. Harlan remains the ultimate villain of this series, and for that I am relieved. It's made clear that Paxton was the favourite. He was more open to connecting with Alma, he was the stronger telepath, but that does not mean Pointman was completely ignored by her. She still wanted to connect with him, and while as a child he seemed unsure by her presence, he still ultimately reached out to her as well. There was still connection between them, and that ultimately led to him showing mercy at the end, unlike Paxton, who was too twisted up by his experiences to do anything other than consume and destroy. I enjoyed this game, a little more than I expected to, confusing though it was at times, but the fear factor, was lackluster this go around, at least for me. Parts of F.E.A.R 2 still managed to get to me on occasion, but there were only a couple of points in this one where a sudden appearance managed to get a mild jolt out of me. It just did not hit me the same way, which is a real shame. I don't relish it when a horror game fails to get under my skin. It's just disappointing and I wish it had done better. Like, I found the sequences with the creeping up on you more tedious than anything, which again is a shame because these could have been very tense and unsettling and just fell flat for me. I liked the beginning of the supermarket level where you're herded through a maze of flashing screens while dark humanoid shapes flit and jump around you. It was neat and gave you a feeling of being hunted and corralled, but I didn't find it scary necessarily. Another thing that I liked was the almost La Llorona vibes of Alma's adult spectre, heavily pregnant, weeping and howling, and the long hair that almost looks like a flowy dress, and the fact that the game began in South America for some reason, so that particular legend just jumped into my head when I saw her. Overall, I feel like this game could have been so much better than it was. I've heard it said that you can't be afraid with a gun in your hand, that action and horror don't mix, but you can very much still be spooked and intimidated even if you are armed. There's a delightful push and pull to be had in an action horror game, where you start off weak, gain ground, overcome the first obstacle and get a period of feeling confident, before something new and stronger comes along to return that feeling of intimidation and start the cycle over again. It can be done, it just takes care. I enjoyed my time revisiting this series, for the most part, and I hope at some point it's treated to a revival with a team that cares deeply about what they're making and have the support behind them to see it through. Until next time.